The 50th floor of Megacorp's headquarters buzzed with an undercurrent of tension. The pristine corridor, stretching like an endless runway, reflected the harsh fluorescent lights off its newly polished surface. At one end, Felipe Mendez strode purposefully, his expensive shoes clicking against the floor in a rapid staccato rhythm. Felipe's face was a mask of determination, tinged with the stress of an impending presentation. His tailored suit, worth more than most employees' monthly salaries, seemed to armor him against the world. As he rounded a corner, his eyes narrowed at the sight before him. José, a janitor in his 60s, methodically mopped the already gleaming floor. His weathered hands moved with the practiced ease of someone who had spent decades in this line of work. The name tag on his gray jumpsuit caught the light as he worked, oblivious to the approaching executive. Felipe's pace quickened, his mind racing with the details of his upcoming presentation. In his haste, he failed to notice the yellow "Caution, wet floor" sign. His shoe caught the edge of José's mop bucket, sending a cascade of dirty water across the immaculate floor. Time seemed to slow as the water spread, creating a dark stain on the perfect surface. Felipe stared at the mess, his face contorting with rage. The stress of the day, the pressure of the competition, and his own sense of superiority coalesced into a storm of fury. He turned on José, his voice rising to a shout that reverberated through the hallway. The words that poured from Felipe's mouth were a torrent of insults and accusations, each more vicious than the last. He berated José for his incompetence, questioned his worth, and demanded to know how someone so useless had managed to keep their job. As Felipe's tirade continued, other employees began to gather at a safe distance. Some watched with wide eyes, shock evident on their faces. Others snickered behind their hands, perhaps relieved that they were not the target of the executive's wrath. A few looked away, uncomfortable with the public humiliation unfolding before them. Throughout the verbal onslaught, José remained silent. His face was an inscrutable mask, betraying no emotion. Yet, there was something in his eyes, a glimmer of intelligence, perhaps even amusement, that went unnoticed by the irate Felipe. It was as if José knew something that no one else in the corridor could possibly understand. The air grew thick with the mingled scents of cleaning products and dirty water. The once pristine floor now bore the marks of Felipe's outburst, the spilled water a stark reminder of how quickly perfection could be marred. As Felipe's words echoed off the walls, the contrast between his unbridled fury and José's calm demeanor created a palpable tension. It was a scene that would be etched in the memories of all who witnessed it. A moment that would have far-reaching consequences for everyone involved, though none could have guessed it at the time. The corridor of shame had lived up to its name, becoming the stage for a drama that would set in motion events that would shake Megacorp to its very foundations. 1 week earlier, the air in Megacorp's executive boardroom had been thick with anticipation. The aroma of expensive coffee wafted through the air, mingling with the scent of polished wood and leather. Rodrigo Alves, the CEO of Megacorp for the past 2 decades, sat at the head of the long table, his fingers lightly drumming on its glossy surface. As Rodrigo announced his impending retirement, a hushed murmur rippled through the room. The board members exchanged glances, their whispered conversations creating a low, anxious hum. Rodrigo's eyes swept across the faces before him, noting the mix of surprise, concern, and in some cases, barely concealed ambition. After the meeting, Rodrigo retreated to his office, accompanied by his longtime assistant, Marina. The door closed behind them with a soft click, sealing them off from the buzz of speculation that had erupted in their wake. Marina's brow furrowed as Rodrigo revealed his unorthodox plan for selecting his successor. Rodrigo's eyes sparkled with a mix of mischief and determination as he outlined his scheme to disguise himself as a janitor named José. He explained how this ruse would allow him to observe the true character of the CEO candidates, away from the polished facades they presented in formal interviews. Marina's initial reaction was one of concern. Her voice carried a note of worry as she pointed out the potential risks and ethical implications of such deception. However, as Rodrigo elaborated on his reasoning, a grudging admiration crept into her expression. She recognized the depth of Rodrigo's commitment to ensuring the company's future was in capable and worthy hands. In the days that followed, Rodrigo underwent a remarkable transformation. In a small, private room adjacent to his office, he donned the disguise that would turn him into José. The coarse texture of the gray janitor's uniform felt alien against his skin, accustomed as he was to tailored suits. A wig of graying hair and skillfully applied makeup completed the illusion. As Rodrigo studied his reflection, he barely recognized himself. Meanwhile, the Human Resources Department had been busy. They had narrowed down the pool of potential CEO candidates to 5 finalists. Among them were Phillip, known for his sharp business acumen and aggressive strategies, and Ana, respected for her innovative approaches and strong leadership skills. As the candidates were briefed on the final stage of the selection process, none of them suspected the true nature of the test that awaited them. They had no idea that the unassuming janitor they would encounter in the coming days held their fates in his calloused hands. The stage had been set. Rodrigo, now fully transformed into José, prepared to step into the shadows of Megacorp's corridors. The risk of discovery loomed large, carrying with it potentially disastrous consequences for both Rodrigo and the company. Yet, as he adjusted his nondescript uniform one last time, Rodrigo felt a sense of purpose that he had not experienced in years. The corporate masks were in place, on both sides of this elaborate charade. As the elevator carried Rodrigo down to the lower floors, where he would begin his observations, he knew that the coming days would reveal truths that no boardroom meeting or interview ever could. The halls of Megacorp buzzed with an electric tension as the final stage of the CEO selection process commenced. Various corporate environments, from sleek conference rooms to bustling open-plan offices, became arenas for the candidates to prove their worth. Phillip, with his sharp suits and sharper tongue, had quickly established himself as a frontrunner. His technical prowess was undeniable as he breezed through complex financial scenarios and market projections. The constant clacking of his fingers on the keyboard during tests was a testament to his speed and efficiency. However, his interactions with subordinates left much to be desired. He had barked orders, dismissed suggestions, and on one occasion, reduced an intern to tears with his caustic criticism. In contrast, Ana approached each challenge with a measured calm. Her solutions, while perhaps not as immediately dazzling as Phillippe's, demonstrated a depth of understanding that impressed many observers. She had a knack for drawing out the best in team exercises, her empathetic leadership style fostering collaboration and innovative thinking. The other candidates fell somewhere between these two extremes, each bringing their unique strengths and weaknesses to the fore. As the days progressed, the pressure of the competition began to take its toll. The air in the offices grew thick with the mingled scents of expensive perfumes and nervous sweat. Tense expressions became a common sight, with furrowed brows and tight-lipped smiles betraying the strain felt by all. Hi, Mrs. Touching Stories here. Enjoying the story? Subscribe now, like and comment to catch all the upcoming emotions. Throughout it all, José the janitor had been an unobtrusive presence. He had mopped floors, emptied trash cans, and blended into the background of every scenario. Yet his eyes missed nothing. Behind the facade of the humble cleaner, Rodrigo's keen mind had been hard at work, observing and analyzing every interaction, every decision made by the candidates. As the week neared its end, a minor incident threw the contrasting approaches of Phillip and Ana into sharp relief. A junior employee had made an error in a presentation, an error that could have significant repercussions if left uncorrected. Phillip had pounced on the mistake, his voice rising in anger as he berated the employee in front of the entire team. His face had flushed red with fury, spittle flying as he demanded to know how such incompetence could be tolerated. Ana, witnessing the scene, had intervened. With a calm but firm voice, she had redirected the conversation, focusing on solutions rather than blame. Her approach not only resolved the issue, but also turned it into a learning opportunity for the entire team. As she spoke, the tension in the room had visibly dissipated, replaced by a sense of collective purpose. José, ostensibly busy cleaning nearby, had observed the entire exchange. His weathered hands had paused in their work, the mop held still as he took in every detail of the incident. Later, in the privacy of a maintenance closet, He had scribbled furious notes, his disguised features creased in concentration. As the candidates filed out that evening, the weight of the competition hung heavy on their shoulders. Felipe's stride was aggressive, his jaw set in determination. Ana moved with purpose, her composure intact despite the day's challenges. The others followed, each lost in their own thoughts about their performances and chances. None of them noticed the old janitor watching them leave, his eyes twinkling with a knowledge far beyond his apparent station. The game had indeed begun, but only José knew the true rules and stakes involved. The aftermath of Felipe's outburst lingered in the air of the 50th floor corridor. The harsh fluorescent lights cast an unforgiving glare on the mess that remained, a stark reminder of the incident that had unfolded moments ago. The acrid smell of cleaning chemicals mingled with the lingering tension, creating an atmosphere thick with unspoken emotions. Ana had rounded the corner just as Felipe stormed off, leaving José to deal with the aftermath of his tirade. Without hesitation, she approached the older man, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. José looked up, surprise flickering across his weathered features as Ana knelt beside him, reaching for a spare cloth to help mop up the spilled water. As they worked side by side, the rhythmic sound of the mop against the floor punctuated their quiet conversation. Ana's voice was low and measured as she inquired about José's well-being, her concern evident in every word. José, for his part, responded with a calm that belied the tumultuous scene he had just endured. Their conversation deepened as they worked, moving beyond the immediate situation to touch on broader themes of leadership and respect. Ana's words carried the weight of personal experience, her insights revealing a depth of character that had been honed through challenges and setbacks. Unbeknownst to them, Felipe had not gone far. He stood at the far end of the corridor, partially hidden by a pillar, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. As he watched Ana and José interact, his initial shock at her intervention gave way to a simmering resentment. The easy rapport between them only served to fuel his anger, a stark contrast to the fear and resentment he had inspired in José earlier. As the floor gradually regained its pristine appearance, Ana shared a personal anecdote that had shaped her leadership philosophy. She spoke of a mentor from early in her career who had taught her the value of empathy and mutual respect in the workplace. Her voice carried a note of reverence as she described how this experience had transformed her approach to leadership. José listened intently, his mop stilling as he absorbed Ana's words. Behind the facade of the humble janitor, Rodrigo found himself genuinely impressed by the candidate's insight and humanity. It took considerable effort to maintain his disguise, to not reveal the approval that threatened to shine through his eyes. The fluorescent lights overhead cast a soft glow on the now clean floor, reflecting off the polished surface and illuminating Ana and José as they finished their task. The gratitude in José's tired eyes was unmistakable, a silent acknowledgement of Ana's kindness and understanding. As Ana bid José farewell and walked away, her heels echoing down the corridor, the contrast between her approach and Felipe's became glaringly apparent. The seeds of a deeper conflict had been sown, one that would extend far beyond the competition for the CEO position. Felipe, still watching from his hidden vantage point, felt his resentment crystallize into something harder and more dangerous. His hands clenched at his sides, knuckles whitening as he struggled to contain the emotions roiling within him. In Ana, he no longer saw just a competitor, but a threat to everything he had worked for. As the echoes of Ana's footsteps faded, the corridor fell into an uneasy silence. The incident had passed, but its repercussions would continue to reverberate through the halls of Megacorp, shaping the events yet to unfold. The Megacorp headquarters had become a hotbed of whispered conversations and furtive glances. In the company cafeteria, Felipe had taken to holding court at a corner table, his voice low and intense as he spoke to the other candidates. The clinking of coffee cups and the hum of the espresso machine provided a backdrop to his machinations, as he skillfully wove a narrative that painted Ana as a threat to the company's future. José, ostensibly busy wiping down nearby tables, kept a weathered ear tuned to these conversations. His wrinkled hands moved methodically over the surfaces, while his mind raced to process the implications of Felipe's words. With subtle actions, a dropped napkin here, an accidentally bumped chair there, José managed to disrupt Felipe's more damaging insinuations. Meanwhile, Ana had sequestered herself in one of the smaller conference rooms, her brow furrowed in concentration as she pored over financial reports. The rhythmic tapping of her fingers on the keyboard echoed in the empty room as she worked late into the night. It was during one of these marathon sessions that she stumbled upon a critical flaw in one of Megacorp's flagship projects, a flaw that could potentially cost the company millions if left uncorrected. For several nights, the soft glow of Ana's computer screen illuminated her determined face as she worked tirelessly to develop a solution. She moved through the office like a ghost in the late hours, careful not to draw attention to her discovery or her efforts to fix it. Felipe, driven by his growing paranoia, had taken to stalking the corridors at odd hours. His once immaculate appearance had begun to show signs of wear, his hair slightly disheveled and his eyes ringed with dark circles. He jumped at shadows, convinced that Ana was somehow orchestrating his downfall. José watched this unfolding drama with an increasing sense of concern. The lines on his face deepened as he observed Felipe's erratic behavior and Ana's quiet determination. Maintaining his disguise had become a constant struggle as he found himself more and more impressed by Ana's integrity and leadership. The tension in the office ratcheted up day by day. Employees began to notice the strain, exchanging worried glances as Felipe's temper became more volatile. The air in the meeting rooms felt thick with unspoken accusations and barely concealed animosity. As the final presentation loomed closer, the contrast between Felipe and Ana had never been starker. Felipe prowled the offices like a caged animal, snapping at subordinates and glaring suspiciously at anyone who dared to speak to Ana. Ana, on the other hand, maintained a calm exterior, though the dark circles under her eyes betrayed the long hours she had been working. José, ever present in the background, felt the weight of his deception more heavily with each passing day. His gnarled hands gripped his mop handle tightly as he watched Felipe corner one of the other candidates in a hushed, intense conversation. The fluorescent lights overhead cast harsh shadows across Felipe's face, emphasizing the almost manic gleam in his eyes. As the chapter drew to a close, the stage had been set for a final confrontation. The air in Megacorp crackled with tension, like the calm before a storm. José knew that soon, very soon, all would be revealed, and the consequences of this elaborate charade would reshape the future of the company in ways none of them could have predicted. The main conference room of Megacorp buzzed with anticipation on the morning of the final presentations. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the polished mahogany table where the board of directors sat, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. The air was thick with the aroma of strong coffee, a necessary fuel for the high-stakes meeting ahead. Felipe strode into the room with an air of supreme confidence, his tailored suit impeccable and his hair meticulously styled. He exuded an aura of success, as if the outcome had already been decided in his favor. As he set up his presentation, the click of his Italian leather shoes on the hardwood floor echoed in the quiet room. Ana entered moments later, her demeanor more reserved, but no less determined. Her eyes betrayed a hint of nervousness, but there was a fire behind them that spoke of passion and vision. She nodded respectfully to the board members as she took her place, her movements deliberate and composed. José, in his janitor's uniform, quietly entered the room under the pretense of refilling water pitchers. His weathered hands moved steadily, betraying none of the internal struggle he faced in maintaining his disguise. As the presentations began, Felipe took center stage. His voice resonated with authority as he outlined a 5-year plan focused on aggressive growth and cost-cutting measures. The bright graphs and charts of his PowerPoint presentation flashed across the screen, a dazzling display of projected profits and streamlined operations. The board members leaned forward, their pens scratching furiously as they took notes. Hi, Mrs. Touching Stories here. Enjoying the story? Subscribe now, like and comment to catch all the upcoming emotions. When Ana's turn came, she presented a more nuanced approach. Her plan balanced innovation with employee well-being, emphasizing sustainable growth and corporate responsibility. Her voice, though not as bombastic as Felipe's, carried a quiet conviction that commanded attention. The graphs she displayed showed a more modest but steady growth trajectory, interspersed with metrics on employee satisfaction and community impact. Throughout both presentations, José listened intently, his face an impassive mask. When the time for questions arrived, he surprised everyone by speaking up. His queries were incisive and thought-provoking, challenging both candidates to defend their strategies. The board members exchanged glances, clearly impressed by the depth of understanding displayed by the unassuming janitor. As the presentations concluded, a tense silence fell over the room. The board members huddled together, their whispered deliberations barely audible. Phillip stood tall, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth, confident in his victory. Anna, by contrast, appeared calm but alert, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. José retreated to a corner, ostensibly to clean up discarded coffee cups. His eyes, however, never left the huddle of board members. The weight of his secret identity pressed heavily upon him, as did the knowledge that his decision would shape the future of Megacorp. The tension in the room was palpable as the board prepared to announce their decision. Years of corporate maneuvering, weeks of intense competition, and the contrasting visions for Megacorp's future all hung in the balance. As the chairman cleared his throat to speak, the room held its collective breath, awaiting the verdict that would set the course for the company's next chapter. The tension in the conference room had reached a fever pitch as the board members prepared to announce their decision. However, before the chairman could speak, José the janitor stepped forward, his movements suddenly imbued with a purpose and authority that seemed at odds with his humble appearance. In a fluid motion, José removed his gray wig and wiped away the makeup that had aged his features. The room fell into a stunned silence as the familiar face of Rodrigo Alves, the supposedly retired CEO of Megacorp, emerged from beneath the janitor's disguise. The sound of sharply indrawn breaths echoed through the room, a collective gasp of shock and disbelief. Rodrigo's voice, no longer the gravelly tone of José, but the clear, commanding timbre they all recognized, filled the room. He began to methodically expose the behavior and actions of each candidate over the past week. As he spoke, he produced evidence, surveillance footage, recorded conversations, and detailed notes that painted a comprehensive picture of each candidate's true character. Felipe's face, which had moments ago been a mask of smug confidence, now contorted with a mix of panic and rage. His eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape or ally, finding neither. As Rodrigo recounted Felipe's manipulative tactics and abusive behavior towards staff, Felipe's composure crumbled entirely. He attempted to interject, his words coming out in a frantic, disjointed babble as he tried to justify his actions. Anna, by contrast, appeared shocked but maintained her composure. Her brow furrowed as she processed the information, her mind clearly racing to understand the full implications of this revelation. While Rodrigo's account of her actions was largely positive, highlighting her integrity and leadership skills, Anna's expression remained guarded, aware that the situation was far from resolved. The board members' reactions ranged from outrage at being deceived to grudging admiration for Rodrigo's elaborate plan. Some sat in stunned silence, while others engaged in heated whispers, their faces cycling through a range of emotions: shock, anger, and eventually a dawning understanding. As Rodrigo concluded his revelation, the atmosphere in the room had transformed completely. The air felt charged, as if a thunderstorm had just passed through. Felipe had slumped into a chair, his earlier bravado entirely evaporated. Anna stood straight, her chin lifted slightly, ready to face whatever came next. Rodrigo himself appeared both relieved and apprehensive. The weight of his secret had been lifted, but the consequences of his deception remained uncertain. His posture had changed, shedding the stooped stance of José for the upright bearing of a CEO, yet there was a new vulnerability in his eyes as he faced the judgment of his peers and subordinates. The room hung in a moment of suspended animation. The future of Megacorp balanced on a knife's edge. The revelations had shattered the carefully constructed facades of the corporate world, exposing the raw humanity beneath. As the initial shock began to wear off, the room braced itself for the fallout, knowing that the repercussions of this moment would reshape the company in ways none of them could have anticipated. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the CEO's office, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany desk. Rodrigo sat behind it, his fingers steepled as he contemplated the events of the past week. The weight of his decision hung heavy in the air, mingling with the faint scent of leather and wood polish that permeated the room. A soft knock on the door preceded Anna's entry. Her face betrayed a mix of emotions: surprise, apprehension, and a steely determination that had become her hallmark. Rodrigo rose to greet her, his movements deliberate and measured. The words he spoke next would change the course of Megacorp forever. Later that morning, the main conference room buzzed with nervous energy as employees and board members gathered for the announcement. Rodrigo stood at the podium, his presence commanding attention even without the CEO title. As he began to speak, a hush fell over the room. The announcement of Anna as the new CEO was met with a moment of stunned silence. Then, hesitant applause began, growing in volume and enthusiasm until it filled the room with a thunderous ovation. Anna stepped forward, her posture straight and her eyes bright, with a mix of surprise and resolve. As she took her place at the podium, the mantle of leadership settled visibly on her shoulders. Rodrigo's speech that followed was a masterclass in leadership philosophy. He spoke of humility, respect, and the importance of character in guiding a company. His words resonated through the room, touching on the experiences of the past week and the lessons learned. As he spoke, eyes darted between him, Anna, and Phillip, who sat in the back, his head bowed. When Phillip stood to speak, his usual confidence had evaporated. His voice, normally strong and assertive, wavered as he offered his apologies. The sincerity in his words was palpable, surprising many who had known only his arrogant persona. As he pledged to learn and grow from this experience, a ripple of murmurs spread through the audience. Anna's first address as CEO was brief but impactful. She outlined her vision for Megacorp, emphasizing innovation, employee well-being, and ethical business practices. The announcement of a new mentorship program was met with nods of approval from the board and excited whispers among the employees. As the meeting concluded, Rodrigo approached Phillip. The two men stood face to face, the contrast between them stark yet somehow diminished. Rodrigo's offer of mentorship was met with a mix of surprise and gratitude from Phillip. The handshake they shared was tentative but held the promise of a new beginning. The final moment of the day saw Anna and Rodrigo standing side by side in the CEO's office. The handshake they exchanged was firm and meaningful, symbolizing not just the transfer of power, but a commitment to the values that had been laid bare through this unconventional process. As employees filed out of the building that evening, the atmosphere was charged with a sense of change and possibility. Conversations buzzed with speculation about Anna's leadership and Phillip's transformation. The future of Megacorp remained uncertain, but there was a palpable sense of optimism in the air. The sun was setting as Rodrigo left the building, casting long shadows across the corporate landscape. He paused for a moment, looking back at the towering structure that had been his life's work. A small smile played on his lips as he turned and walked away, leaving behind a legacy that would continue to unfold in ways he could only imagine.